So about a week after we put out our video about the tram formation of Diagonal, in which, commenting on the design of the intersections, we noted, but combined with the wide, odd-angled intersections of Diagonal and the central median bike path, this lack of clarity and navigability adds up to a real problem. Someone put up a DIY sign at that very intersection, urging cyclists to respect the stoplights and be careful of crossing pedestrians. So, we here at Biking Barcelona headquarters decided to send our best investigator out into the field to take a closer look. Bon dia, and welcome back to Biking Barcelona. First, let's get ourselves situated. We're going to be looking at this intersection of Avinguda Diagonal, Valencia, and Naples. It's a complicated intersection with a lot going on. We're going to break it down, see how it all fits together, and then what, if anything, could be done to make it work just a bit better. So to start, there are 4 categories of users that need to make it through the intersection. There's the tram, cars, bikes, and pedestrians. And we're going to go through each of them one by one. First, the tram. It runs along Diagonal in both directions with absolute priority and its own signals. Simple. Next, the cars. Along Diagonal, there are 2 lanes in each direction. Both Valencia and Naples are one-way. These are the possible turns, while the right-hand turn from Naples onto Diagonal is prohibited. Now let's add the bike lanes. Diagonal has a bidirectional path in the median, and both Valencia and Naples have one-way lanes on the left side of traffic. Most of the turning options are what you would expect, except for the ability to make the right-hand turn from Naples onto Diagonal this way, avoiding a few lights. And finally, pedestrians, who have the sidewalks, islands, and these crosswalks to get where they need to go. And then we're going to finish up by adding in the landscaping and marking the area inside the intersection where there are no conflicts between different users. This will be useful later. And I just want to take a moment to say that while everything is more or less to scale and in the right place, this isn't a technical survey. It's just a map to help us get oriented. So with all that in mind, let's go see how this plays out in real life. The tram has its own light that allows it to traverse the whole intersection in one go. Anything that might cross its path will have red. Cars, too, have a signal on the near side where they stop that allows them to cross the whole intersection. Some turns require yielding for pedestrians in the crosswalk, but there is enough time and space so this isn't a problem. Pedestrians have a light for each segment of crosswalk on the far side of where they are waiting. Sometimes contiguous segments are linked and sometimes not, but either way, pedestrians only need to pay attention to one light at a time. And cyclists. What do they see? Let's go back to our map for just a moment. The sign complaining about cyclists was placed here, implying that this crossing is the source of the conflict. We're going to see that there are 2 underlying problems. First, with the signaling cyclists have to navigate, and second, with the alignment of the paths and how that affects where cyclists can stop and let pedestrians pass. Approaching the intersection along Diagonal from below, cyclists see this. First, there's our old friend the flashing yellow, reminding us to yield to pedestrian. And then we see 3 lights. The first at bicycle height immediately to our right, and then one higher up on the left, and lastly, another overhead on the right again. This first light corresponds to this stop line and controls this segment. And both of these other 2 correspond to this stop line and control this second segment. This isn't terrible, but it's not exactly clear either. Luckily, these 2 are never green while this first one is red, or else a cyclist looking up and ahead at that middle light could easily end up getting hit by crossing cars. Instead of up and across the oncoming lane to the left, which is not where you would usually look for it, the more natural place for this light would have been here. And look, nothing excuses a cyclist for not paying attention and failing to yield to pedestrians. But the distraction of this unnecessary confusion doesn't help. This second stop line is right in front of the crosswalk, causing the conflict with pedestrians. Making it more legible and intuitive for cyclists would be a good first step. And what about coming from the other direction? We once again encounter 3 lights. Though you could be forgiven if you missed the first one. It really looks like it governs cyclists going this way. But if you look closely, you can see that their light is actually over there. This one, again, unintuitively across an oncoming lane and off to the left, is actually synced with the one ahead and is meant for this first segment. And the light for the second segment is, once again, on the far side and across an oncoming lane to your left, not the first place you normally would look for it. Lots of cyclists pass through this intersection every day, mostly without a problem. But all of these unintuitive signal placements add confusion and hesitation, where spur-of-the-moment interpretation has to fill in for missing confidence and clarity. Often it will work out just fine. But when people get it wrong, either despite their best intentions or because they're assholes who don't care to get it right, you get exactly the kind of uncomfortable near misses and dangerous interactions the DIY sign is complaining about. That's what's going on with the signal placement. Now for the issue with the path alignment and how that interacts with the different phases of traffic. Let me explain. When cars on Diagonal have green, cyclists on Diagonal also have green the whole way, and crossing pedestrians have red. When cars on Valencia have green, pedestrians and cyclists have red for the segment crossing Valencia, but cyclists have green for the segment that crosses Naples, meaning that if they already crossed Valencia, they can continue on, and if they are going the other direction, they will have to wait here, in this safe zone that is before the pedestrian crossing. And lastly, when cars on Naples have green, pedestrians can safely cross. Cyclists crossing Naples, of course, have red, and the way the intersection is currently set up, they also have red for the segment that crosses Valencia, presumably to prevent conflict with crossing pedestrians. And let me be clear, cyclists who run this red light are 100% in the wrong. But it does create an unusual situation. A cyclist who crossed to here during the previous phase and is now waiting to continue will see red, even though no cars are coming their way, and almost every other intersection in the city allows them to proceed through a crosswalk as long as they yield to pedestrians. It feels like it should be allowed, but it currently isn't. Similarly, coming from the other direction, a cyclist, such as this one, will look at the situation and feel that they ought to be allowed to cross and wait in the safe zone on the far side of the crosswalk. And I completely understand why that's not allowed. Cyclists running this red light is part of what led to that DIY sign. But I also think the engineers who designed this intersection missed a better solution. Or, more likely, misunderstood the problem. I suspect they drew nice straight lines for all of the lanes, added traffic lights wherever needed, or in the case of the bicycle paths, wherever was convenient, and then assigned red and green phases so there would be no conflicts. Sounds reasonable. But the problem here isn't actually with the light phases. It's earlier in the process. The nice straight lines created this safe space for cyclists to wait. But if it was on the other side of the crosswalk, a lot of the conflict would have been eliminated. Cyclists coming up Diagonal would have passed through the crosswalk while pedestrians still had red, and cyclists coming down Diagonal could wait before the crosswalk. Of course, that's currently not possible because it would leave cyclists waiting in the middle of Valencia. But what if we moved everything over? The safe zone for waiting is smaller now, but it should still be enough. There also isn't a problem with moving the crosswalk over, because cars are already prohibited from making this turn, so they don't need any room to wait and yield to pedestrians. That's also why we can extend the curb at the top there and shorten the distance pedestrians need to cross a little. It does eliminate this turn for bicycles, but to be honest, it's signaled so poorly and used so rarely that having cyclists take the longer way around seems fine. But really, the point is, by having cyclists wait on this side of the crosswalk, we can let them have this green light without creating any conflicts with pedestrians. And of course, there will always be people who run red lights when they shouldn't. But if we make the whole situation clearer and more logical, we make it easier for people to follow the rules and be safe.
I would like to add a broader reflection about standardization and cognitive load, meaning the mental effort we all make to just move around. There's plenty of research showing that infrastructure and signaling have a huge impact on this cognitive load, this mental effort. And this is true for pedestrians, car drivers, and cyclists in the same amount. But notice, for pedestrians, for instance, everything is standard, meaning in every crosswalk in Barcelona, we know how to identify it's a crosswalk. There's lines painted on the floor. And we know where to expect a light that's at the other side. And the same standardization is true for car drivers. So once you learn to navigate the city, this gathering information becomes automatic, and one can just focus on what's necessary in that moment, which is, are cars coming? Are pedestrians coming? Is the light green? And we only have to make the extra effort and relearn everything if we move or visit a different place, like a different country. However, for cyclists, this is not true even within the city of Barcelona. In every intersection, the light is in a different place. In every pedestrian crossing, the rules are different. It's either yield or full red or something else. And so this means that navigating the city by bicycle requires an additional cognitive load on top of the necessary one of noticing pedestrians, noticing cars, and noticing the road conditions. And I believe that this lack of standardization can also deter some people from cycling just normally. In other places, for instance, the Netherlands, where every bike lane is just what's painted red, it's much easier to navigate, only because you don't have to make an extra effort to know where things are. Things just are where you expect them to, once you learn them. And so I hope that we, the city of Barcelona, decide to standardize all this infrastructure only as a means to get more people to cycle, to feel like the infrastructure and the signaling are more inviting.
And look, we don't expect the city to go in and redo this specific intersection tomorrow. Though it's worth remembering that the current layout was built entirely from scratch just last year when they put in the tram. But hopefully it can serve as an object lesson of how small design choices can have a large impact, and the importance of thinking about how people moving through a space are going to actually experience it. But for now, gracias y fins aviat.